ServSafe 14 exam questions. You should always inform staff of underscore 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 and retrain them if needed. Deficiencies. T or F, the FDA requires all states to adopt the FDA Food Code. False. When regulatory authorities conduct inspections, they primarily use as guides the 5 risk factors for foodborne illness and the FDA's public health interventions. Which is true about the FDA Food Code. It provides recommendations for food safety regulations. T or F, most of the time, health inspectors will arrive without any warning. True. What is an example of a priority item used in an inspection? Using correct handwashing procedures. An operation should do self-inspections more often than regulatory inspections. What is the potential penalty for refusing to allow an inspector access to the operation? The inspector could revoke the operations permit. What should the manager do when an inspector comes to a food service operation? Take notes of problems or issues being pointed out. Benefits and guidelines of self-inspections. 1. Benefits: safer food, improved food quality, cleaner environment for staff and customers, higher inspection scores. 2. Guidelines: use the same type of checklist that the regulatory authority uses. Identify all risks to food safety. After the inspection, meet with staff to review any problems. T or F, state and local regulatory officials have the same rules about how often an inspection should be done. False. What documents should a food service manager provide to a health inspector? Purchasing records, proof of food safety knowledge, PCO treatment plan, HACCP records. Which agency is responsible for issuing licenses and permits, as well as enforcing regulations for food operations? State and local regulatory authorities. Having soap at a handwashing sink is an example of a underscore 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 underscore. Priority foundation item. Which are true. All operations that serve food to the public are subject to inspection. Food service inspection programs measure whether an operation is meeting minimum food safety standards. Food service inspection programs help an operation comply with safe food practices. Regulatory authorities have begun using a more risk-based approach when conducting inspections. Regulatory requirements guide the inspection. Which risk designation is considered the most critical when evaluating operations? Priority items. How long does a food service operation typically have to correct a violation of a priority foundation item? 10 days. If a food service operation closes voluntarily after a significant health hazard has been discovered during an inspection, the operation does not have to underscore 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 underscore. Post a suspension order at a public entrance to the operation. For violations, listed below, are noted on an inspection report. All of them need to be addressed in a timely manner, but which item should be considered the highest priority? Raw poultry is stored on a shelf above uncovered ready-to-eat food. What are the 3 risk designations that the FDA recommends regulatory authorities use when evaluating operations? Priority items, priority foundation items, core items. After an inspection, you will be given the results and a score in the form of underscore 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 underscore. An inspection report. Before allowing an inspector into a food service operation, staff should underscore 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 underscore. Ask for identification. What determines how often a food service operation is inspected? Size and complexity. What should a food service manager ask for from a health inspector before allowing entry to the back of the operation? Credentials. Which of the following statements are true? Food safety inspections are conducted at the local level. The CDC helps with keeping food safe. The FDA inspects all food except meat, poultry, and eggs. Which behavior is appropriate during an inspection? Taking notes on problems or issues brought up. The food service manager should know that state food codes underscore 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 regulate retail and food service operations. When regulatory authorities conduct inspections, they primarily use as guides the 5 risk factors for foodborne illness and underscore 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 underscore. The FDA's public health interventions. Which governmental organization provides educational services in the field of sanitation? Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Signing the inspection report acknowledges that you have underscore 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 it. Received. If the inspector identifies clear evidence of a foodborne illness outbreak related to the operation, what outcome is likely? The operating permit may be immediately suspended. If an inspector finds a violation and notes it on the inspection report, what is usually the best course of action for a manager to take? Discuss the time frame for correction of the violation. Which agency is responsible for inspecting all food except meat, poultry, and eggs? FDA. Discuss the inspection report with the underscore 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 in order to review time frames and necessary corrections. Inspector. How long does a food service operation typically have to correct a violation of a priority item? 72 hours. What are 3 examples of hazards that would warrant the closure of a food service operation? 3 examples of hazards that would warrant the closure of a food service operation are: 1. Long interruptions of electrical or water service. 2. Significant lack of refrigeration. 3. Backup of sewage into the operation or its water supply. 4. Emergencies such as a building fire or flood. 5. Significant infestation of insects or rodents. 6. Clear evidence of a foodborne illness outbreak related to the operation. The FDA considers keeping equipment in good repair to be a underscore 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 core item. What government agency publishes statistical data and case studies in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, MMWR? CDC. What government agency is responsible for the regulation and inspection of meat, poultry, and eggs? USDA. If an inspector asks to see the operation's purchasing, pest control, or HACCP records, it is appropriate for the manager to ask underscore 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 underscore. Why do you want to see the records? T or F. The USDA regulates foods that cross state boundaries. True.